Today, I want to talk about the first episode of Life at 70. I want to share a story of a woman that I met a few years ago, and we became really good friends. So, let me start this series with Miss Levy. By the way, that's not her real name, but to preserve her identity, we will call her Miss Levy. Levy because of life and stuff. When I met Miss Levy, she was almost 80 years old. Actually, she is 79 years old today. Miss Levy grew up in a family of 10 or plus. She had an older sister and she was the second. And every kid after her became kind of her children because she was the one taking care of them. Her father was heavy with the bottle, so sometimes he will be angry and beat his wife, and Miss Levy will be the one stepping between her mom and her father to protect her mother. Although her mother didn't really like her mother liked her sister. Her sister was the babe, like she calls her, and Miss Levy was the Regan. That's how her mother used to call her. She used to tell her that she was ugly, she was this and that, all those things that we will talk about in the future videos. This is the relationship with her mother. When it comes to her father, he's someone, as she said, who grew up in a difficult environment, and he grew up with abuse, and that's the only thing he knew. So he used to beat his wife, of course, but he also used to beat Miss Levy. The babe was protected by the mom, and the other kids, the little other kids, were protected by Miss Levy. So she will gain those punch, and she usually joke about the fact that if today she has chicks, it's because of her father fist. And I'm smiling because today she's laughing about it. Okay, it's not a beautiful, it's the sad story, but we will talk about it with time. I just want to paint you the picture as she painted it to me. Okay, so she grew up with a mother who treated her differently from her sister. While her sister was protected, Miss Levy became the one who cleaned, the one who served, the one who carried responsibilities that shouldn't have belonged to a child. Okay, she wasn't taught that her needs mattered. She learned that love meant sacrificing yourself, that being good meant giving more, that your value came from what you did for other people. Children don't usually question these lessons, they simply absorb them. And then they grow up believing they are just part of, those things are just part of who they are. Actually, those things are who they are. Wow, right? Years passed. She became an adult, then a mother herself. You would think life would become different, but it didn't. When she became a mother, she wanted to prevent her son from living what she has lived. So she provided everything to him. She never said no to her son because that's the way she felt like she could protect the child, right? So her son eventually began asking her for money again and again and again. Sometimes hundreds of dollars, sometimes more, sometimes less. She almost always said yes. Not because she had plenty, no, because she didn't actually. She often struggled herself, right? But saying no felt almost impossible for her. Then there was her sister. Even decades later, the imbalance never really disappeared. Miss Levy still found herself giving, helping, putting everyone else first. She rarely asked herself what she needed. It had become normal to give. It had become normal for her to be almost invisible. When you look at each story by itself, they seem unrelated. A difficult mother, a demanding son, family dynamics, money problems, but I don't think they are separate stories. I think they are different chapters of the same lesson. And that's why I wanted to begin with her whole life before diving into each relationship individually. Today, I'm just giving you the full picture for you to kind of see what the dynamic is, or was, and still is. And we'll go deeper into those different dynamics, each one at a time, and we'll try to see the lesson that we learned from those stories. Because if we only looked at her son, we'll miss where the pattern began. If we only look at her sister, we'll miss what shaped it. Okay, everything started somewhere. Okay, everything starts somewhere. One day, Miss Levy asked me a question: what is the best thing that ever happened in your life? I thought about it for a moment, then I answered, I learned to love myself. She became quiet. Then she started crying because after nearly 80 years, she realized that she had never truly learned to love herself. That moment has stayed with me ever since because it made me wonder how many of us spend our whole lives taking care of everyone else. I was doing that. I'm still doing that sometimes without ever learning how to take care of ourselves, how to care of ourselves. This is where my framework begins. The first step is awareness. Not awareness of other people's behavior, but awareness of our own patterns. Miss Levy wasn't simply generous. She had learned that love required self-sacrifice. And as we dive into more detail of her life, I will explain that more. She wasn't weak. She is not weak. Oh my gosh, she's strong. But she had been trained from childhood to ignore herself. And when something is repeated long enough, it stops feeling like a choice. It starts feeling like your personality. And we have to scratch that to see who am I underneath that. In the next episodes, we're going to slow down and look at each chapter of Miss Levy's life through a different lens. We will look at her relationship with her mother, her sister, her son, money, and the beliefs that quietly connected them all. Because my hope is not that you simply understand Miss Levy's story, it's that somewhere along the way, you will recognize pieces of your own story, and maybe you won't have to wait 70 or 80 years to begin asking a different question. And I'm not sharing her story to put the blame on her or to remove responsibility from her. No, we are not the judge. I'm not the judge. I'm just observing. I'm just using my framework to understand more, and you can have other idea, another point of view, another way of seeing her story. But I think her story is worth sharing because she is a wonderful woman. She is a wonderful woman who fought hard for the little thing, the little joy that she can have. And it's important to recognize those people. Also, it is important for us to step aside, to pause a little bit our lives and to see the people who have done what we are doing right now and see if there is a lesson that we can take from it. If we are not on the right path, there's no right path, there are paths. If the path we are taking is the path we want to consciously create, that's what I want us to pay attention through these stories I'm going to share with you. Thank you for watching. I'm Crystal. Bye. See you in the next one.